We meet again, my liege. Wash me! Unhand me, swine. I'm cold, sir. That's toasty. How cozy. A duck! No, too many duckies!
The Greek philosopher Socrates once said that the only true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing. Well, I know everything, and that's why... Alright, scallywags, we all love role-playing games that come in books. Cozy, dreamy, cream-colored pages. Hardbacks so thick they resemble the reassuringly strong arms of a lover. Except it's not your body being enclosed safe and sound, it's your imagination. But you show me someone who role-plays out of a book, and I'll show you a coward. People who know they'll never be short of ideas, huddling behind that preposterous page count as if they were hiding behind their mother's skirts. Now, I've got nothing against mothers, or skirts, or hiding, but today on Quinns Quest, I'm here to tell you there's another way. Today, I'm reviewing 4 of the best role-playing games that come in boxes, and I'll be giving an honorable mention to 2 of their best friends. Have I played these games? You bet your pencils I have. That's the Quinns Quest guarantee. I actually played more than just these 4 boxed RPGs for this special episode. These are just the 4 games that I loved. I'll tell you what, I like that we're reviewing 4 games in this episode because, you see, a box has 4 sides. And apparently reviewing Triangle Agency last episode has irrevocably dented my brain. But all jokes aside, which is convenient because I don't have any more, I think this is the most important episode of Quinns Quest I have done yet. I wouldn't have started Quinns Quest if I didn't believe that role-playing games were having a moment right now. However, for me, as an evangelist who wants to further these developments, trying to get someone into role-playing games by handing them some books feels like trying to get someone into music by being like, you're gonna love music. Here, just take this guitar and hold these maracas, but don't shake them yet. Don't shake them yet. It's crazy. You want to get someone to this hobby by handing them something that's thicker than the manual for their new car, but with pictures of dwarves? I'll tell you what's also stupid and backward when it comes to accessibility. The default way of playing our hobby is to meet up for a campaign lasting years, where you have to meet maybe 6 times for the story to even get going. Sure, you can technically play any of the games I've reviewed on Quinns Quest as a one-shot lasting just 1 evening, but let's be real, that's awful. That's like going to Kenya for an adventure holiday, but your return flight leaves in 3 hours. GMing is hard enough already. Stop making these poor people run the game as if they're a video playing at 1.5 times speed. It really couldn't be simpler, you guys. To get more people into this hobby, we need more games with simple rules, where the plot accelerates immediately and where everything is wrapped up by the end of the evening. I'm talking about story games where the plot deploys instantly, boom, like a parachute, and always reliably floats you down towards a finale. It is crazy that more games aren't designed this way, because all we're doing in this hobby is being sat in a circle telling a story, an activity humans have been doing since before prehistory, and it doesn't usually take 9 months or a Bible full of elves. Now, if we're talking about games that are simple and short enough to be completed in a single evening, there is of course no reason why they can't come in a book. And for solid examples of that, you could look at The Skeletons, or Bluebeard's Bride, or Last Train to Bremen. But in this reviewer's humble opinion, if you want a product that makes things as easy as possible for the players, our future lies in boxes. Because a box says to a designer, please use every tool at your disposal to make this easier. Cards, boards, bits, apps, maps. And a box says to a player, hey, don't worry about doing any hard work. We've done it for you. So that's my cheery intro. Let's see what fun is waiting for us in the first game. Wants to experience the great winter of 1888. Wait, it gets better. This story is so small scale, you'll have crystal clear HD mental images of the body parts you're losing to frostbite. and the house cats that you're eating, or eating you. Look, it's more fun than it sounds, all right? The design of Desperation is super funky. Think of it like a voyeuristic role-playing game where the players around the table aren't creating characters because the characters are already right there on the table. And then you don't decide what they do because that's all in this deck of cards. Instead, on your turn, you draw a card to reveal a slip of fiction as dirty and delicate as a used needle. You read it aloud to the table, and then you simply decide who's saying it, and also perhaps who they're referring to, and maybe also who's now dead. Because Jesus Christ, there is so much death in this game's cast of characters. Everywhere you look, someone's getting smoked. Reminds me of when I was playing Apex Legends. I was half expecting this deck to have a sniper rifle and a zip line. Anyway, sorry, would you like me to continue explaining the rules of Desperation? I actually can't because I already have. Magnificently, that is the game. You just take turns, draw a card, read it, that person said that person's now dead, that person's moved house, draw another card. You spend the first act, Autumn, getting to know the town, setting up some romance and intrigue. You spend a second act, Winter, having to assign punishing developments that are universally upsetting to a cast of characters you've grown to like. And then you spend a third act, Hell, in which, well, we wouldn't want to spoil that, would we? But what is bitingly cruel is the game only ends when you draw this card that says Spring finally comes. But it is shuffled into the bottom of the deck somewhere. And this then creates this lush bit of immersion where the players around the table share a sensation with the characters in the game that you all just cannot believe this winter will not end, and you're all praying for spring. Because as players, you've already killed off all the pillocks and the liars and the greedheads. And all the people that are left to kill are the kiddywinks and the lovers and that one character in the shack that you low-key decided is kind of your player character, even though you're not technically supposed to do that. And then it's your turn to step up to the plate and draw the next card from this unforgiving, hateful deck. And you're just praying that at the bottom of that card will not be printed the words, "Put someone in the dead house." No! But don't worry, if the sound of an isolated agrarian community losing its food, then its pets, then its limbs, then its children, then its mind, then asking why God has forsaken them sounds a little bit, I don't know, sad, there is another game you can play in this box. This box actually contains 2 different experiences. Super cool. Instead of spending your evening in the southern Kansas town of Neola, you can instead spend your evening, also in 1888, with the crew of a 3-masted cod schooner. And in this deck, the plot is that you're sailing into a storm that the ship cannot weather, and where the crew will soon start losing its ship, then its limbs, then its mind, then asking why God has forsaken them, and then dying. Because variety is the spice of life. So I adore Desperation. It's proof as if it was needed that designer Jason Morningstar is an absolute legend, a titan of the tabletop scene. And together with the rest of the team at publishers Bully Pulpit, they've put together like a gothic narrative train set. I couldn't believe how evocative this game is. But then maybe I shouldn't be surprised. The people and locations on this game are just captivating. The writing is transporting and so tight. There's not a single typewritten keystroke out of place. And you know what else? It's not just that this game presents characters and locations to you with incredible vividity. It's also that it takes you back in time. It transports you to another era, better than any other RPG I've ever played. And it's kind of a cheat the way it does that, right? Because traditionally, RPGs are like, the story is a collaboration between the players and the designers, but not really in this game. No, it doesn't let you decide on anything that happens in the plot. It only allows you to decide what the angle is, who's saying it. And in doing that, it doesn't let you f up any of that historical accuracy, which I think, as a history nerd, is a good thing, and that's what I want. You guys might disagree with me here, that's fine, but to me, like, I haven't researched this era, me and my friends are gonna screw it up. Please, take the wheel, guys. So that's a lot of like lofty hyperbaton, but then the actual game is so simple and so fun. You just sat up here deploying plot like Zeus throwing lightning bolts. Bam! Bam! Your child hates you. Your dog is dead. This game makes me sound like a psychopath. But listen, have you ever seen any of those puppeted Sylvanian family short form videos where someone plays out the plot of an entire adult movie in like 2 minutes and it's super funny? There's a little bit of that energy in this game. It's kind of funny, right? Because this is like the most unbelievably bleak setting of all time. And yet what this game captures, I think, is that feeling of being a kid and like puppeting your toys around. And listen, when I'm talking about how role-playing can be, and arguably has to be, simpler and quicker and punchier, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Although I will add here, and this is true of just about every game I'm covering in this episode, just because these games can be played in an evening, they do not have to be. Like, most Desperation cards end with this line, which is speak your truth. And that means that you can give a monologue as that character, you can play out a short scene, you can sit back as scriptwriters and consider other things that happen because of this bit of the plot. You can do whatever you want. And if you bought Desperation and told me, oh yeah, we played Dead House and it took us 4 weeks playing every Friday, that would make sense to me. But for the record, you could also bash this game out on a lunch break at your work. As for criticism of Desperation, I don't really have anything negative to say about it, except maybe that, well, it's not the cute animals from Sylvanian family cheating on one another. In terms of just its game design, Desperation could have been the box that I recommend to everybody to get them into the hobby, and it's not that, is it? It's 2 separate depictions of the year 1888 full of loneliness and miscarriages and cod and copywriting like, my horse Sally slipped her halter and fought her way up the hill and ate her fill of black locust bark. Now she's pissing herself and falling over and dying. I loved that horse. I needed that horse. Which is to say, it's not a game for everybody. It's the game that Jason wanted to make, which is what Bully Pulpit do, and it's why they have the wildest back catalogue of any RPG publisher, with games like The Skeletons, which involves sitting in the dark with your friends in silence, and Cowboys with Big Hearts, a game about playing a posse of cowboys on a quest for revenge with literal heart disease, and where every skill check is a coin toss as to whether your medication works or you literally shit yourself. Ooh. So, I think Desperation is astonishingly good, and also a missed opportunity to create the most accessible role-playing game of all time, but if Bully Pulpit had done that, they wouldn't be Bully Pulpit anymore. But if you do want something less bleak, Bully Pulpit will soon be coming out with another boxed game, Xenia's Wonder Tales, and this one is all about playing out Russian folk tales, and where I'm pretty sure you can have a sexual relationship with a bear. That's it. That's the end of the review. Tacklebox is a 2-player RPG that's not for everyone. Fortunately, it's for me. And since I'm the one who makes these reviews, I've very much got you dweebs under a barrel. But 2 things about this box do make it objectively exciting. First off, it tells stories in the genre of surrealism, and that's not something that gets explored very often in role-playing games. Like, it appears as a subgenre, like it's a surreal fantasy game, but not often by itself. And I think that's a shame, because this hobby is so indescribably weird that surrealism is surely us playing to our strengths. Tacklebox is also noteworthy because technically it's not a TTRPG, because you see, it doesn't use a table. It is in fact a LARP, and that's an acronym that stands for Live Action Roleplay, aka Recreational Play Pretend Time. For the duration of a game of Tacklebox, your 2 players are going to be sat as if they are in a fishing boat together. So, we don't need this table. Let's get rid of it. This is awful, and I regret it immediately. So for the duration of your 2-player game of Tacklebox, you and your other player are going to be casting lines, reeling, fishing, and generally using the space. And if you think that's cringe, look, I don't know what to tell you, but I think you've got it backwards. I think in terms of how many cool points this hobby gets you, we pretty much hit rock bottom when we decided that charisma and fitness would be reduced to literal statistics as if they've both just been murdered. But LARPing? LARPing is just acting. And I thought we decided in our society that actors were kind of cool. So get over yourself and come join me in our imaginary fishing boat. Ooh, don't fall in. So the way that a game of Tacklebox works is that it's always about two characters called Robin and Parker, and before the game begins, you and your other player will decide which of you's which, how you know each other, and why you're out here fishing. And then you just start playing. You're just two people in your living room pretending to be fishing. Does that sound weird? No, it's gonna get weirder. You see, as you're playing, you're also going to make sure that this game's deck of 40 cards is somewhere near the two of you. And when either of you want to draw a card from this deck, within the fiction, you tell the other person you're getting something from the tackle box. So you're like, I'm going to get a beer from the tackle box, and then you draw a card, and what's on that card? Well, I really want to spoil as little as possible here, so I'm going to read you just one card in full. This fishing experience is an elaborate game. You just have to figure out the exact right things to say or do, the proper path through the dialogue tree with your companion in order to unlock the later stages of this game. And then this game never leaves you hanging. There's always just this little valuable bit of clarification. This is not your first time playing out this interaction, but you're determined to unlock it this time. But that's just one card. All I can tell you is that whatever happens in your game of Tacklebox, there will be a recurring gameplay loop where one of you goes, I'm going to get some more bait from the tackle box. What the f? And then very importantly, in this game, you do not show or even explain the card you've drawn to the other player, which gives the whole experience this very avant-garde stage play vibe, where to begin with, the two of you are telling the same story, and then one of you draws a card and just starts acting super weird. And the other player is saying, what in balls are you talking about? And that's a fun dynamic, except then maybe they draw a card that makes them weird and then you're on the back foot. But this game isn't fun because it's high-minded and theatrical. It's also fun just because it plays with knowledge and power dynamics. Imagine you drew that card we saw earlier where you're like, oh, okay, I'm in a video game, I'm trying to pick the correct dialogue option. That's fun. But then if 5 minutes later your friend draws a card and suddenly starts talking to you about how none of this is real, right? And then you're gonna be like, yeah, but then in character you get to go through this tumble dryer realization of wait, is this NPC becoming self-aware? Is this video game just really avant-garde? Or am I in fact not in a video game and experiencing psychosis? And this is the game. And what I love about Tacklebox is there's so much variety in this deck that when you sit down to play it, you truly don't know if you're about to experience something super silly or really thought-provoking. All you know is the game is going to continue stumbling forward like a drunk giraffe until both players have drawn 3 cards, which probably contain a total of at least 3 or 4 mind-bending plot twists. And at that point, one player can ask the other, how many more fish do you want to catch? Which is code for how many more cards do you want to draw? But the other player can just say, let's just go home. And that's it. That is the last line of your play. I do still feel super naked without my table though, so let's just get it back. Here's a separate capsule review of Tacklebox for you. The first time I played Tacklebox, my friend and I played it across 30 minutes. We then talked about that game for 20 minutes. We then immediately decided to play another game of Tacklebox. And after that, I was left going home thinking about the other friends I wanted to play this with, which is also just me wanting to show it to them. And while I'm not expecting a lot of you to be super excited about Tacklebox, I think you'll be more excited by the games coming later in this video. I just want to talk about why this game hit so well for me. First off, I think the combination of super high-minded meta plot twists combined with something as humdrum and human as being stuck on a fishing boat together, that just goes together like peanut butter and chocolate. Also, designer Jay Walton has just made a really strong deck of surprising prompts. I trust this deck to show me a good time. I trust that in the game that we run with it, we're going to laugh and we're going to come away thinking about the weird peculiarities of the terrible play we just wrote. But maybe more even than that, there's something so exciting about Tacklebox because when you sit down to play it, literally, when you sit and climb into that fishing boat with your friend, you have no idea what's about to happen. When I sit down to play this game, my heart rate actually increases a little bit because it's this trust exercise almost you're doing with someone else. The final prompt that I drew in my first game of Tacklebox caused me to turn in character to my friend and say the words, I'm gonna kill myself. And he turned to me in a panic and went, F off. And both of us delivered those lines entirely straight, not as jokes. but the combination of them caused us to immediately just piss ourselves laughing. And that's the game. Like, usually role-playing games are like a collaboration between the players and the designer to build a story together. In Tacklebox, it feels like absolutely no one is in control. Not the designer and not either player. And maybe if this was a game where you're sat at a table with pencils and paper, that would just be kind of annoying. But because this is a LARP, because you're in character, because you have nowhere to go, it's quite thrilling. And then finally, I just love how little space it takes up. It's got no rules to teach. It's got no expectations of what the experience is going to be. It comes in this little deck that you can just slip into your pocket, right into your pocket, and then you can go to your friend's house and say, hey, do you want to do something weird with me? It takes about 20 minutes. Before we move on from Tacklebox, I do just want to say that Possible Worlds Games has another game in the same product line that... Oh, Jesus.
Hi there. It looks like you're trying to review a role-playing game.
I'm actually succeeding at reviewing a role-playing game.
Perhaps you'd like to know more about the following subjects. Success?
Perhaps you'd like to f*** off.
I'm sorry? I understood you as far as wanting to f*** off.
That was the end of the sentence. That was everything you needed to pass. That you always do that. Let's go to the Patreon push. Kissing. Quarrels. Boobs. Penis. What do all these words have in common? That's right. They're the language of romance. And that is the subject of the video that I have just dropped today for members of the Quinns Quest fan club. The fan club was previously available as a magazine, which it could be said provided the letters page was always a particularly... So today, if you want to support the work that I do telling people about role-playing games, it all happens at patreon.com/quest. Just $4 gets you access to a ton of extra content, but also, and I don't say this enough, the warm, satisfying feeling in the pit of your belly that your money is now mine. But also, in the last 6 months, the Patreon appears to have become a place where I put slightly more vulnerable or just downright sketchy content that I am absolutely fine with less people seeing, such as this month's video on romance. So in my home role-playing games, I've actually been on a bit of a journey. You see, 4 years ago, 4 years, I set myself the goal of seeing if I could make my players make their player characters kiss. And if that sounds problematic, I mean, yeah, but just hear me out, all right? So what the hobby of role-playing is just a bunch of people sat around a table telling a story together, right? And to me, stories that don't have some amount of love or sex or intimacy or queerness just fall flat. Like, try and pick a TV show or movie that you've seen that isn't made for like super small children that doesn't have some amount of romance or sex appeal in it. It can't be done. It's too fundamental to the human condition. So, my goal of making my players kiss, was it awkward? Yes. Did I get consent from them though? No. But what have I got to show for it after 4 years of hard graft? That's right. I've got a Patreon video talking about how and why my efforts were a failure, but also, psych! This video also talks about where and how I succeeded. My home games now often feature romance. My players are mostly comfortable with it, except for the ones that aren't, but all of my players would agree that the romance we now do that seemed so impossibly cringe 4 years ago now generates some of the most exciting and funny and memorable moments in our roleplay. So, if you'd like to hear the juicy details of some of those scenes, if you'd like to hear how I got a table of awkward adults into describing things to one another that, if not directly hot, is certainly hot adjacent, and maybe most importantly, if you'd like to hear where I went about this the wrong way, it's all happening at patreon.com/quest. Before we move on, I just wanted to say that publishers of Tacklebox, Possible Worlds Games, have another great game in the same product line, Better Strangers, by designer Tyler Crumring, which is a game you play while people watching, inventing stories for people you see in real life at a cafe or a bar or in your prenatal class. Don't do that. Now, a game of what is essentially judging strangers in public could have easily been cruel, transforming you and your friends into the mean girls at the back of the bus. But I'm pleased to say that Tyler has thought about that an awful lot, with hard rules like the subjects should not be children, Allow children to create their own stories before you create ones for them. Isn't that a lovely bit of copywriting? It's almost enough to make you forget that it's there to stop you from aggroing mobs of furious parents. And then just as importantly, the game's deck is full of really positive prompts, like this person neutralized a threat to something or someone important to them. What was it? So good. And then you can move on to the next stranger if you want, or you can continue fleshing out that first stranger by using the italicized halves on the bottom of the cards. Like, this person has a catchphrase. What is it? I wasn't expecting anything from this box, but it ended up really impressing me. What a great gift for the gamer in your life that has everything. And look how good these two little boxes look together. Now, who wants to see a box that I don't like the look of? I don't like this box. I don't like the art. I don't like the composition. I don't like how big it is. I don't even like the name. Lovecraftesque? That sounds like the literary equivalent of something that, for legal reasons, has to be called orange drink. Except I also find Lovecraft kind of played out, so it's more like tired drink. And yet, this game designed by Joshua Fox and Becky Annison snowplowed through my wonky first impressions, and I actually found this tired drink refreshing and delicious. And I would actually like to serve a bowl of this tired drink to my friends. Yeah, let's drop this analogy, it's dumb. Basically, this box lets a table of 3 to 6 players create, but also kind of experience a horror movie together. A bit like how the popular game Microscope lets a group of people create a whole world and its history. This box lets you create a protagonist who proceeds to have a really, 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 really bad time. Also, I should mention, as far as H.P. Lovecraft being a famous piece of shit goes, this game has absolutely done its due diligence. There's a box out in the rules, as well as 2 separate appendices being like, by the way, we know Lovecraft was racist even by the standards of the time. And then the game actually also has a bunch of content written by people of color. So that's cool, but here's the thing. I don't think they had to brand this game with Lovecraft at all. They did it because this game considers itself an engine for telling Lovecraft-style stories. That's because it has this super strict structure where a lone individual first denies some supernatural things are happening, but keeps pulling those threads until they finally realize a terrible truth behind it all, and then it's too late! And am I crazy for thinking like, yes, that does describe H.P. Lovecraft, but today that simply describes most horror movies. Anyway, what is this game? Why are you covering it, Quinns? Why is it cool? Let's go. So you set up Lovecraftesque by choosing a scenario, and that gives you some characters and locations and gets you to customize a deck that everyone's going to draw from during the game. Like, I played Mr. Giggles Comes to Dinner, where our protagonist was a single dad who worked in a chemical plant and whose daughter was fine. She was absolutely fine. Why does everyone keep asking if she's fine? Yeah, she's a little obsessed with her imaginary friend. I mean, aren't most 8-year-olds? And these cards are the kind of time-saving initiatives that makes me a fan of boxed RPGs. So I suppose we'll start this evening by creating our cast of characters? No, the game's done it for us. Look, there's some characters. Oh, okay, cool. Well, next, I would like in our story if out back of the house, the camera could linger on a sort of... Oh, you mean like out back of the house, there's a spooky service tunnel, ladder goes down to a locked door, door remains locked till the last possible second, camera lingers on the locked door throughout the movie. When the door's finally open, it's maybe connected to the chemical plant, maybe it's not connected at all, and maybe that's a sign of the father's psychosis. Yeah, that's in the game, it's on a card already. So, when setup is complete, then you and the other players around the table are free to start enjoying the wild structure of this game in play. You see, in Lovecraftesque, everyone at the table takes turns playing the protagonist from scene to scene, and everybody else is a kind of GM trying to bully them. It is a lot more complicated and nuanced than that, but that is my favorite bit. Basically, you all have these roles that pass clockwise after every scene. One card says you're the protagonist, you make decisions and say that character's internal monologue. Another card says you're the GM. You describe the scene and you build up to the clue card in your hand you're going to play, and then everyone else is a whisperer, who are like the backing band for the GM. They can chime in with atmospheric details, they can play NPCs if the GM asks them to, but also they're there to answer questions. Now, especially in my house, lots of role-playing games can feel a bit like a writer's room. Lovecraft really leans on that. Mid-scene, the GM can be like, okay, you see the house and I need a reason for him to go in the house. Oh, what would his shithead colleagues be like? What's the worst thing his daughter could say to him right now? That'll break his heart. Perfect. So play proceeds like this, with players swapping roles, and each time you do, telling a new scene of your story, and that scene often ends when you've introduced a clue. And these clue cards come from a deck, but this deck is only here to help you. Some of the help is really useful, but also, and I love this, the game says you can just kind of ignore your hand of cards. If you just love what another player put down in the last scene, you can build on that clue. The only rules are that at the start of the game, the GM can narrate no harm to the player or any NPCs, and also anything supernatural has to have a rational explanation. It's just that as you go from Act 1 to Act 2, these rules start to flake away until you enter a truly electric Act 3, where you turn all the roll cards face down and players take turns narrating just a few sentences at a time until you arrive at these red numbered scenes, at which point any player can be like, I got this, and take the narrative baton and then proceed to describe a final scene where they essentially break the protagonist once and for all. Now, once again, let me admit that I am drastically oversimplifying the machinery in this game. And that's partially because I want to get through a lot of reviews in this episode of Quinns Quest, but it's also because, once again, I don't want to spoil some of the secrets in this game. Because the truth is, Lovecraftesque is quite a funny thing. The structure in this game is sensationally strict. It's like the RPG equivalent of a ballet teacher that thinks cruelty to children is basically okay if you get a good performance out of them at the end. This game's like, we're gonna create a good horror movie, which means we have to stick to these 18 rules. You can't do this, you must do this, you can't do this, you must do this. And I respect that, because horror, as a genre of storytelling, is made up of a load of really strict rules. But, as any horror fan will tell you, horror is also defined by breaking those rules, those narrative conventions, right? Because when the audience knows they're in a narrative convention, they can start to feel safe. And ripping those rules away can be one of the most effective rules in horror. And Lovecraftesque actually does that as well. Because it turns out, and I don't want to say any more than this, one of the reasons that this game has this unbelievably tight teach, where it's like, these are the incontrovertible testaments of the game that no one can ever break, is so then later in the game player can break them and then everyone goes, what? Taken as a whole, Lovecraftesque is very good, but I don't think it's amazing. I had a terrific time with the evening I played with it. I probably won't play another evening of it just because my schedule's so tight. So, with that in mind, who would I say should buy this game? There are several answers to that question. I'd say the cheapest is for anyone who wants to trick their friends into trying GMing. You say to your friends, who wants to come over and play a collaborative story game? But then actually, surprise, sucker! It's actually kind of like a karaoke night where we all have to take turns being the GM, but in the most supportive environment imaginable. It's the least intimidating that GMing could really be, because you're only doing it for 15 minutes at a time, you're only ever GMing for one player, and you're doing it with a bunch of assistants. This is very real. My two friends who I invited to play Lovecraftesque had like a little bit of a panic when they realized they were going to have to GM for me. But then by the end of the evening, they came away really proud and thinking, wow, I can GM. Okay. I'd also say Lovecraftesque is well worth a buy for any table of players who get hot at that idea of the sort of reverse role-playing where you've got 5 GMs collaborating to give one player a terrible time. And it is so entertaining how that role rotates. Like, I spent 45 minutes trying to give this protagonist a terrible time, and then when that protagonist roleplay got back to me, I was like, wait a minute, this is terrible! Finally, I'd say that this is a worthwhile kind of research purchase for anyone who's interested in game design or narrative design or how stories are told. Because the thing is, Lovecraftesque has literally 20 times as many rules as Desperation. And that heavy machinery does work, but it doesn't work smoothly. Like, certainly your first teach of Lovecraftesque, but also probably your first game, and maybe even the first story you tell with this game, will probably be quite juddery. And I don't mean this next bit as a criticism. I mean, for the right group, it could genuinely be a positive. But this game feels like signing up to take a pottery class together. It's strange, it's slippery, it's embarrassing, it's fascinating. You're probably gonna be bad at it. And yet, there's something just cool and bonding about it. And for me, what makes Lovecraftesque something that I think you'll really love versus something that I think you might regret purchasing is how much you're interested in that slippery, weird structure of not pottery, but storytelling. let me give you a couple of stories from my evening spent with Lovecraftesque that show exactly why this game is awkward, but also why that awkwardness is cool. So one of the things is that you're all taking turns role-playing as this protagonist, right? Which means their personality comes out slowly and as a group effort. So I was watching a scene where my friend was playing that protagonist and they said something as our character that made me go, oh my God, our character beats his child. And then when it got back to me, I incorporated that into my roleplay, and that player who taught me that was like, what? And then I explained it and she was like, oh, okay, oh no! Your mileage may vary. You might not enjoy having a firm idea on who this character is. I think that's awesome. Or like, here's another example. You know how there's that rule in this game that the GMs kind of support GMs can roleplay NPCs in the scene the GM is describing? That often simply doesn't work. And yet it does. Because the thing about being NPCs in a horror movie is that you don't know where the scene the GM is doing is going. So you're like, yeah, sure, I'll be this NPC. And then you're like acting in a way, but you keep making eye contact with the GM, like, am I doing it right? It's so awkward. It's like being the actor in the only performance that will ever be done of this play, and you haven't read the script. And yet, again, the end result is kind of cool because ideally, your GM is reacting to things the NPC is doing, and the NPC is reacting to what the GM is doing. And in the ideal world, you end up with this kind of like David Lynch dissonance where there is stuff to be scared of in the scene, but then the NPC is being scary in a different way. But whatever happens, you're not going to end up with a scene that is anyone's like exact vision for that scene. And actually, that's kind of what role-playing is. That's the whole point. We're trying to keep our stories feral and alive. So basically, Lovecraftesque is a great horror jam session. I do just wish it was a little simpler and the art design was a little cooler. Or maybe I've just been inspired by our next game and the final game in this episode. Get ready for something very impressive and very sad. Today we've looked at some games that are cool, sweet, interesting, or just bonkers. But now, please join me in sitting up straight and wiping any part of you that may be dripping. Because we're in the presence of I should not put my arm on it. We're in the presence of greatness. So City of Winter by designer Ross Cowman. Wouldn't it be funny if this was another game about starving to death in the winter of 1888? It's not. This is a fantasy game about forced migration and what a community has to give up and what they cling to. Where winter is, I think, a metaphor. Although this is still a game where your characters are going to die. But this game is also sad because this box costs $160 plus shipping. The publishers actually sent it to me with their previous game, Fall of Magic, which costs $150 plus shipping for a total of $310 plus shipping. And if the publishers hadn't sent me these games, I would not have played them because that's too much money, even for me. And I'm nuts. But now that I have personally explored these games with my fingers and face, I don't actually think that price point is outrageous. These are beautiful objects, handmade by a small team, and certainly the game design underneath City of Winter is diesel. It is immediate and efficient and intoxicating and intense. But also, and by far most importantly, you do have the option of just buying the cheap digital version from the publishers online and just print and playing the game yourself, which for a game this good, I think is still going to make you feel rich. That's maybe a stretch. I've printed and played games before, and being sat there with your paper and your scissors mostly just makes you feel like you're in primary school. But playing this game, print and play, you are going to feel rich in feelings. Now I say it out loud, that kind of sounds like a euphemism for mental illness. Let's move on. These two games are very similar. This one definitely feels like a sequel to this one, but in terms of which you should buy, Fall of Magic is an homage to classic fantasy and tells the story of a group of heroes crossing the world, with names like Caspian, Golem of Ravenhall, and places like Castle Stormguard and Farmer's Market. And I like it. It's good. But if you were wondering which of these two games to buy, for me, it's not a contest. City of Winter is mechanically way more interesting, and in terms of the story it tells, It's more novel, it's more moral, it's more worthwhile. Let's get into it. Now, there are rules for playing City of Winter solo, but the normal, full-throated experience is for 3 to 5 players with no GM. No one's outranking anyone else. And you are going to be playing members of an entire community that is crossing the world in search of safe haven. To start, you read the following. The Umbra is coming, and the Riverlands are no longer safe. Our family must leave for the City of Winter to find another home. But what is this terrifying Umbra, and what defines the Riverlands? Well, that's up to you, and I suggest you get used to it, because from this point onwards, City of Winter is going to be speaking to you in sentences that top out at about 4 words. And just the confidence of the craft in this game, you can think of it like a riverboat that you and your friends are going to get into, that's going to float you down a stream. It's going to give you direction, it's going to give you grandeur, and it's going to give you excitement, but it's also going to give you silence. Like, I cannot overstate the extent to which this game just shuts up and lets you tell a story. It makes every other RPG you've ever played sound like an aging boiler room with a clanking rule set and ceaseless paperwork. So, continuing setup. The first thing you do in this game is you're going to make a character, you're going to give them a name, and most importantly, you're going to decide how old they are by scribbling between 1 and 6 pips on the corner of your sheet. With 0 marks, meaning you're a child, and 6 marks, meaning you're an elder, who is sadly not long for this plot. And the amount of marks that you made on your character is the number of tradition cards that you draw. Every location in City of Winter actually has its own unique deck of tradition cards, but when you start a campaign of this game, you're going to pick one of the 3 starting locations that your community is from, and you're actually going to put out all the tradition cards, and players can collect whatever they want. It's fun. You're all defining collectively what your people believe in by grabbing these little slices like the cheese and deli meat at a cultural counter. And these cards you end up holding, these are the traditions or cultures or beliefs or arts that you are carrying for your people. That only you are carrying for your people. I think maybe at this point in the video, the smart marks in the audience can maybe see where this mechanic is going and are starting to put their head in their hands. But we'll get to that. We will. The way you actually play the game is that you're going to take turns putting your character's coin on the prompts of the location where your people find themselves right now. So when you start playing City of Winter, this will be your home, where you're from. So let's say it's my turn. I like the sound of this prompt, I put my coin on it, and then I have 2 choices. I can either share a tradition, or I can witness a tradition. If you choose to share a tradition, you're going to pick another player at the table, and then you're going to frame a scene between your character and theirs based on the prompt you just chose. So let's just say I chose floating market here. I might describe a scene where, because the Umbra is coming, all the merchants have left the market on their boats, and your character, you're looking for food for your family and your loved ones, and you can't find any. And then my character approaches, and I say, "Child, don't worry, come to my house." And we roleplay out a scene where I teach your young character that our people, the Temple Herons, always have this pot of stew that is boiling in our living rooms at all times for any strangers or travelers or people in need who are coming past. We keep that burning and we always share it. And then I hand you the card, a pot of river stew. And then that player takes that card and puts it in their hand. And what this all represents is it's just one human saying to another human, "I believe in this. I believe in this enough that I'm going to try and make you believe in it." So that is sharing a tradition. The other thing you can choose to do on your turn is witness a tradition. And if you do this on your turn, the scene you frame doesn't actually involve your character at all. You become much more of a GM. You just pick another character around the table and you draw a card from the location that you're at or from the Umbra deck, which is always available and is basically the degree to which your culture starts to become or be defined by your oppressor or your trauma. So yeah, if on your turn you choose Witness a Tradition, you draw a card from either of those 2 decks, you read the card, and then based on the prompt that you put your coin on, so you're at the floating market and you feel the touch of the Umbra. So rather than framing a scene where your character says to another person, hey, this is a tradition that's important, you instead create a moment for that character where they see something or experience something important. And the scene ends the same way. You hand them that card. And this is the game. I pick a prompt, I share a tradition. The next player around the table picks another prompt, they let someone else witness a tradition. The next player picks another prompt, they share a tradition with someone else. And all of this play can feel quite gentle. You're going to kick ideas around. You're going to do stuff that's accidentally quite funny. You're going to discover stuff about the world building together. Like, there's a lot of animal imagery in City of Winter, and we were like hours into playing when we realized, hang on, when it talks about like the lions here, are they literally lion people? Are we in the furry universe? We decided we were, and that's not because it's like a kink. We just decided that animals and animal people are... Guys, let's move on. So once everyone's framed a scene, you're going to pick up all of your coins and then decide which location you go to next on the beautiful scroll. Maybe you cover up the locations you had before because that represents the Umbra eating things or no. And then all hell breaks loose. Because this is the point in the game when everybody has to discard cards back down to their age, which means you all have to decide which traditions to leave behind. And you're going to watch in horror as that shithead juice box guzzling youth takes that river stew that you so lovingly taught them about and shiftily puts it in the discard pile. What the f are you doing? That's a metaphor for our people's charity. Pick that shit back up. Granddad, the world is ending. I'm trying to figure out the agents of the Umbra. If you cared about soup so much, you shouldn't have tried to talk to me about it. Do you see it? Do you see the game? That's the game. And it only gets juicier as you put out more decks related to all the different environments that you travel through, all the different people who have things to teach you. In my home game, the very first people we traveled with after leaving our home was a bunch of flying airships manned by crows. And I felt that my teenage character just immediately decided that life didn't make sense to her, but it did now with these people. I was begging other players to frame scenes for me that would let me witness crow traditions. It wasn't even a decision for me. I was going to junk my people's historic culture without a second thought. I even drew a particular card that hinted, and all the other players agreed, that I was the only person who'd learned the crow language. I've got a new name now, Dad. It's Ka! But then, imagine my horror when, once we'd all framed scenes with the crows, the players voted and decided to not travel with the crows anymore, but instead go south to the caravan with the oxen. And for me, for my character, and like I was just really feeling what she was feeling, this hurt so much worse than leaving my home behind. And I was left with this horrible choice of the crows that we'd spent just maybe 1 or 2 years with. Was it ridiculous for me to try and maintain what they'd taught me at the cost of abandoning family traditions when I knew if I did that, I'd be upsetting everybody else? And yet, it's not crazy, because if you do make it all the way to the city of, oh my God, to the City of Winter, it's got its own map and it's a multicultural place where players can draw from any of the decks. How cool is that? As it happened though, I didn't have to make any of those choices for that character, because we drew a Witness a Tradition Umbra card that we all decided sounded like we were under attack. And there's a rule in City of Winter that if there's a decision that nobody wants to make, you can pick up a dice to decide what happens. And we rolled. And my character died. Which, to a very small extent, is for the best. Because the intergenerational trauma that that woman would have inflicted on her kids would have been horrific. Like, that character's child talking to their therapist, it'd be like, oh, my mum just really wanted me to be a crow person. And then the therapist is like, oh, was she a crow? No. She spent 18 months with them. 25 years ago. But death in City of Winter, which most commonly occurs from maxing out your age and then failing a dice roll, is a real poignant tragedy for a couple of reasons. And the big one is all the traditions that meant the most to you, that you were hanging on to, they're all gone. Which actually means, and this is just, God damn it, like, talk about a rule that is so simple and then transforms the whole experience. The age you are, which kind of acts like your character class, drastically changes the game you're playing. If you can only hold one card because you're that young, you're trying to decide what defines you as you become a teenager. If you're an elder and you're holding 6 cards and you know you are soon to be murked by the goon squad that is Father Time, you are desperately trying to tell your traditions to everyone else. And then those people can maybe hang on to them as a favor for you, or maybe just ditch them when you're not looking. But with like old people and young people so obsessed with these like quite selfish games, middle-aged people then are the ones that try and keep the peace, but also are focused on the present, the people who are trying to solve the problems in the plot right now. And then what's just is that everyone's playing these slightly different games, but as you all age, your character class is constantly shifting. And it's extra trippy for the old people who go from playing these elders with a million ideas to the next week, they'll play just super young people who technically can't even hold a tradition. But they won't do that immediately. Because, and this is the other reason death is sad in this game, if you die in City of Winter, you don't make a new character immediately. Actually, what happens is you spend the rest of the evening playing out memories of your character. This is so sad, you guys. So before you come back as a kid and the rest of the players start trying to pack traditions into you like they're overstuffing a suitcase, you have to frame scenes where those characters you're with are walking around in the present day and they see something and then they remember something that happened with your character and you role play a scene with them from way back in your past. Maybe it's a shouting match from when you were alive that shows how you just drove each other crazy. Maybe it's the twist that you and him were lovers once long ago. Maybe it's a scene from when you two were super young and you asked her for attention and she didn't give it to you. And now she never can. I know, right? It's like video game protagonist damage sound. Ooh. I'll also just mention here that if I've made it sound like you can play City of Winter for weeks or months, you actually can. This is kind of technically a campaign game, but also it's not. I think it's the best of both worlds. It's a game you can play in just one evening, like everything else I've covered in this episode. That's great. But it's just a game where you finish an evening of it and then you can keep going. And you can keep going and you can keep going. You just play it for as long as you want. There's actually no end for it. If you reach the City of Winter, the game doesn't have an ending. The story is just over when you decide that it is. When does your community stop running? When is it destroyed? When does it find out who it is now? Look, I'm never going to call a game perfect. There's no such thing. I'm also all too aware that 95% of the people that currently play role-playing games would rather play a silly, action-packed campaign of Dungeons and Dragons rather than, intergenerational migrant conflict simulator 2023. A game where the emotional high point is receiving a magic sword as opposed to, being forced to discard the tradition of why we braid our hair because there's no room for it in your life anymore. And you know what? If you were to argue with me that those people are more well-adjusted and have their priorities in order, I'd be like, no, but we can agree to disagree. All the same, I think the reason the word perfect keeps trying to claw its way out of my mouth is because to some extent, this game is perfect for me as a critic because every design decision, every rules interaction bursts for me like a firework. And I can partially say that because there aren't many rules, right? That is a harder statement to make about a game the more rules there are. This game doesn't have many rules, doesn't have many components, doesn't have many interactions between them all. But they're all fierce. Or let's put it another way. This is a game that comes with a goddamn scroll, which is just such a beautiful and totemic object that people see it and then they go, what is this thing? Can we play this game? And I've got to be one of the first reviewers to not even really mention it. And part of that is because I want to encourage you folks to play the print and play version because I do think the price of this game is just, I wouldn't stretch yourself to buy it. Save your money, spend it on 5 other RPGs, The print and play version is good. But the other reason I don't want to cover it is as awesome as this thing is, I think the rules are better. There's limited space in my word count. And if City of Winter didn't have this scroll, I'd like to think I'd still be talking about it. But if it didn't have those crystalline rules, I wouldn't cover it. It wouldn't interest me. And with that, that is just about it for this episode of Quinns Quest. Hopefully you've seen something in this roundup that might tickle your pickle. I'll tell you what though, I've enjoyed working on this video so much, I've already started working on the next one. I'll tell you this, for months now, my friends and I have been meeting up to test what are considered the best two-player role-playing games. And what we found...
Quinns, I would very much like to play a two-player role-playing game with you.
Really? That's actually very sweet of you, Knowledge Knight.
Unfortunately, we can't play a two-player game, because there's only one of us.
Right, because I'm the only actual person here. Right? Because out of the two of us, I'm obviously real, and you're obviously not. Right? Right?
Perhaps you'd like to know more about the following.